Have you ever learned a guitar solo hoping it would improve your own playing? You master it note for note, you can play it clean, but when you put up a backing track and start playing, none of that shows up. Everything that comes out sounds like a disconnected exercise and not like music. So even though you put in the work to master the solo, your playing didn't improve at all. And this won't change if you just keep learning more solos this way. Copying solos is fine, but you cannot stop at the surface. You need to stop learning just notes and start understanding principles that make these solos work. And there is one acoustic guitar solo I keep coming back to with my intermediate students that teaches them how to turn basic guitar skills into playing that sounds pro. So we are going to look at David Gilmour's Wish You Were Here solo live from the Pulse concert. And I have been teaching intermediate players for 17 years, and this is the solo I reach for when a student tells me they can play scales but it does not sound like music. Even though this solo stays in one position the entire time and uses mostly major pentatonic, it is still one of the most expressive acoustic guitar solos I have ever heard. So in this video you are going to learn this solo, but more importantly you are going to learn why this solo works. And these are all things you can use immediately in your own playing. We will cover how rhythmic placement completely changes the mood of the phrase, how choosing the right guitar technique makes your playing much more emotional, and how leaving space between phrases is the difference between a drill and a story. Free tab and the backing track are linked in the description. Let's get into it. So we are in the key of G major, and the chord progression is simple: E minor 7 to G twice, and then E minor 7 to A sus also twice. And then we resolve to the G chord. And the whole solo happens in what most would recognize as shape number 3 of major pentatonic. But I prefer to not think in fingerings. I find it more helpful to orient myself around the root note of a key I am playing in. So we are in the key of G, and G is here on 8th fret of B string, and I have G under my index finger. And the important thing here is to be able to move freely from this G to G 1 octave higher, or to the G 1 octave lower. So if I can do this, I not only can play the scale, but I see the whole scale in relation to the root note, and this is what I call root note orientation. So you are not only memorizing a finger shape, you are also anchoring yourself to a note and seeing everything in relation to it. Now that we can clearly see what notes are available to us, let me demonstrate the first principle that we can learn from this solo. I will play the opening phrase twice, but change timing each time. In the first version I started right on the beat, whereas in second version I started 1/16 note later, the way Gilmour does. And if you listen closely you can hear that it breathed more and it felt more relaxed and human, which is the exact feeling you want for a song titled Wish You Were Here. And this late entrance on phrase 1 is not an accident, because you can hear it also on phrase 2 and 3. He does it on purpose because he knows what it does to the listener. And this is a very important principle that you might want to start exploring. I'm not saying that this is the right approach for every solo. Sometimes you want to be more in the face and push the phrases earlier, whereas when you play a ballad, you might want to start a bit late. The important part is to be aware of the feeling that the rhythmic placement has on a phrase. So that's timing, or where the phrase starts. But Gilmour is also a master of what happens inside the phrase, and that is where the second principle comes in. Let me demonstrate the second phrase 2 different ways, and tell me which one you like more in this context. I'm guessing you preferred second version with a bend because that one allows for more emotion to come through. And bending on acoustic is hard. The strings are thicker and you have to work for each bend to reach the pitch. And this striving for the right note gives the note quality that hammer-on or slide can never produce. And since Gilmour is singing this melody while he plays it, bending the strings comes the closest to matching his voice. But this is not about bends specifically, it is about choosing what serves the phrase musically rather than what is comfortable for your fingers. And I see this tendency in many intermediate players. They often play what is comfortable rather than what sounds best, and in doing so they keep sounding the same. And to not fall into this trap, you need to explore what works best for the phrase and the context you are playing in. And always choose the one that makes most musical sense and not the one that is easiest to play. So now that we saw how Gilmour uses bending to increase the emotional weight of the phrase, let's cover the third principle that he is using wonderfully in this solo: leaving spaces. And listen to the first three phrases of the solo and pay attention to the gaps between each phrase. You can hear that after each phrase there is a clear pause. And the reason in this specific solo is pretty clear. Since he is singing the phrases, he needs to take a breath. But I guess even if he didn't sing while playing, he would still leave those spaces because he understands the impact it has on listener. And listen to this next solo where I play over the same chord progression but don't leave any spaces at all. You can hear how chaotic that sounds. There is no clear stop between phrases, so it sounds like a bunch of notes that don't carry any meaning. In Gilmour's version, you can hear clear musical statements. In mine, it is just mumbling. Of course, I did it on purpose, but I wanted you to hear the contrast, because that second version is how many intermediate players sound when they consider silence to be the biggest enemy of their playing. And so they tend to overplay and underfeel, and their solos sound like mechanical exercises and not like music. But if you become aware of your breathing during soloing, you can get much better phrasing almost instantly with no extra work. Just insert some silence. So now that we understand all the principles Gilmour used to create this masterpiece of a solo, let's hear it from start to finish. Now let's break it down. The whole solo is built from 4 phrases, and once you see how each one is constructed, you will realize how much Gilmour does with very little. Here is the opening phrase. It starts with this simple melody that is played twice, and this is played over E minor 7, and Gilmour targets the 5th and 7th of that chord, and then he resolves it over the G chord. Phrase 2 starts as a variation of the first phrase, similar opening melody, but then he resolves it over G chord and he plays a G major 7 arpeggio. And you can hear that chord in that phrase even without the rhythm guitar. Once more. So the whole second phrase. Beautiful phrasing. Third phrase is my personal favorite because it is a masterclass in phrasing. Gilmour starts with simple pentatonic phrase, but then he continues with this. So he pre-bends the B string on the 10th fret and quickly releases it with a pull off to 8th string, then plays 9 on G string, then twice 10 on B string, and then without plucking that string again, he repeats the same thing and he finishes on the G string. It's just a wonderful phrasing. So the whole phrase. Beautiful. And the last phrase is yet another variation of that first phrase. The beginning is very similar. But as the progression moves to A, he moves up 2 frets to outline that chord and finishes on note 8. So from the beginning of that phrase. And he resolves on that note A, and then he goes back to the G chords as he moves back to the chorus of a song. So that is the whole solo. 4 phrases, 1 position, and 3 principles that make it sound like music instead of scales. Rhythmic placement, bending with intention and space. None of that requires more technique or more scales, it requires more awareness of what you are already playing. And if you are struggling with fretboard orientation, if you are not sure where your root note is or how to see the scale clearly in one position, I made a video about it recently that will help. It covers the 2 shapes I use with all my students to make sense of the whole neck, and you can watch it here. If you found this video helpful, like and subscribe. See you in the next one.